Hello, everyone. Super nice to see some new faces here today. And I actually want to start out this talk in a slightly unconventional way, which is I want to ask you all to reflect on why you're here today. Why are you here at a conference about DeSci and building in the space? And I think for a lot of us, it's because we feel failed by the current healthcare system. So we've decided to build a parallel system of our own. And today I'm going to tell you about HairDAO because I think what we've achieved so far actually shows that this model works. And I also want to give you the playbook that we used because if you're suffering from some condition or a loved one is suffering from some condition, you can actually do something about it. So this is one of our DAO members 6 months ago. He had tried basically every hair loss drug on the market. Minoxidil, finasteride, the usual gold standards, but also more esoteric drugs. So he actually tried a total of 7 different hair loss treatments until he decided to join our observational trial for a drug developed by our DAO and the hair loss researcher Ralph Paus. And this is him 6 months after. So really, really impressive results. And some people actually didn't believe that this was just from our trial and from our actual drug. So I've added also some of the technical images. This is from a tricho scan. And you can see that the actual hair density per square centimeters in the same area increased from 238 hairs per square centimeters to 400, and we have increased thickness. So really impressive results, and I'll take you through how we got there so you can do it too. But to start everything out, I actually just want to give you a little bit of context on hair loss and the fact that it's actually a big problem for a lot of people. So you have about 80% of men who over the course of their lives experience hair loss, and surprising to many, also 50% of women. And these individuals will spend billions, and I mean billions of dollars annually to try to stave off their hair loss and regrow their hair. So the question really is, when you have so many people experiencing it and so much money flowing into hair loss, why is it that we do not have better solutions? And ultimately, it comes down to incentives. If we look at early stage research, the way that usually works is the money is allocated from governments to academics. And the resource allocation happens in a utilitarian fashion, which is good. Most of the money goes to the conditions most people suffer from. But it leaves a lot of diseases aside, and it totally leaves aside things that are cosmetic, which hair loss is, at least androgenetic alopecia. So very little funding goes into the early stage research process. And if we look at the later stage research process, which is usually done by pharmaceutical companies, there's not really an incentive for them for the same reason. So it's not classified as a disease. They can't get reimbursed for it. And for that reason, it's not financially attractive enough for them. And as I said, this has led us to inadequate solutions. There's Rogaine or minoxidil. This works for a decent amount of people, but actually, depending on what studies you look at, it doesn't work in 30 to 70% of patients that take it. So, not great. There's also finasteride. This is actually slightly better, but the problem we have here is that a substantial patient size has really bad side effects. And these will include, depression, erectile dysfunction, and even infertility. And on the point of depression, we actually had a DAO member who shared his story. And his depression actually got so bad on finasteride that he had to quit his job and he had to move back home. But people will endure a lot of these side effects for the reason that they really just care this much about their hair. The final one is hair transplants. This works depending on what type of hair loss you have, but a large patient size, this is not an option. And it's also very expensive. So in the US, it's about $15,000 per hair transplant, and these don't work forever. A lot of people are like, oh, well, but Turkey's an option as well. That's a lot more affordable. That's still $2,000, $3,000. And we're really hoping for something that lasts longer, but also is affordable to everyone. And so I'll tell you how we developed this new drug. and how we generally operate as a DAO, so that, as I mentioned, if you are experiencing anything that you're struggling with, or maybe a loved one is struggling with, you can actually do something about it. We're moving towards this era of patient-centric healthcare. So it all starts with the patient ecosystem, so really having a group of people who all collectively struggle from the same condition or struggle from the same disease. Particularly rare diseases, actually, I think is a really interesting one. And in our case, we have 1,700 individuals that suffer from hair loss, and these individuals are obsessed. My background was in academia, so I've worked a lot with academics, and I've never seen people as passionate as I have in the DAO. And they'll propose new research ideas. They'll, find areas in the literature that aren't that well, established, and propose new ideas. And for all of their contributions, they basically get allocated hair points, and these hair points are then translated into hair token. And so when somebody proposes a new study idea, what basically happens is that people can vote with their tokens on whether to support it or not. And it's a really nice way to align incentives, actually, because the more you contribute to the DAO, the more of these tokens you have, right? You contribute more if you're more obsessed, and the more likely you're going to vote for what it is that's really going to regrow your hair. And once that is done, it usually goes to the lab. In the past, we've been partnering a lot with academics who then basically test out these ideas. And if we see on these ex vivo human hair follicles that a treatment actually regrows hair, and we have a safety profile that's established, it becomes part of our IP portfolio, so we do observational studies, and then actually sell it on our telehealth. So the results of the image you saw in the very beginning are from our collaboration with Dr. Ralph Paus. And what this is a topical thyroid hormone. And we have the observational studies done, we have the patent for it, and it will actually now be available on our telehealth in November, which is very exciting. And by the way, all of this IP, of course, belongs to the DAO, so the DAO members that participate. Another example of a DAO member who was willing to share his photos, who also had an increase of 24 hairs per square centimeters. And the reason I have this image is to also point out that minoxidil regrows on average 15 hairs per square centimeters, and finasteride 18. And this is from a meta-analysis by Godwin and Adelson in 2017. We actually very recently announced the launch of our second patent. This is a cosmeceutical, actually. So unlike for the first drug that I just presented, this one doesn't actually even need prescription. And to highlight this point that I was making on community ideation, this is an example of an idea that a community member came up with and collaborated on with Dr. Chai Squartieri from the University of Brasilia. And this is about basically targeting hair loss drugs directly to the hair follicle, and by preventing them from going systemic, you get to avoid all of these really nasty side effects. And we have several other studies that we're currently doing, but I think if I list them all, might get a little long. But the other announcement is that we've actually now moved into our own lab in New York. Thank you. Appreciate that, guys. So we've moved in there, and we've established our own tissue bank. And we did this in collaboration with a hair transplant doctor. So we're actually testing 100 new computationally repurposed drugs, which we determined would have the highest likelihood of regrowing hair. And this is, by the way, all from open source data sets that are publicly available. And we're going to test them out to see what has the highest likelihood of regrowing hair. And we're also looking at various gene targets. So we started our own lab, and this was touched upon several times before, but by repurposing these FDA-approved drugs, we can really, really improve efficiency. So traditional pharma requires about $1 to $2 billion to develop a new drug. To repurpose a drug actually also costs them $300 million, and we did all of this with $140,000. So it's a massive increase in efficiency. And again, this is cool because it makes it possible for patient-centric organizations to do the same, right? You no longer have to be a big pharma where it's just, the massive conditions that everyone suffers from. But no, you have a rare disease, or you have something that's maybe not classified as a disease. You have an option to do something about it, which is really exciting. And it's also a lot quicker, actually, because the community sees all the data along the way. There's full transparency, and community members get to decide, okay, does this look good? Does this not? And as I alluded to earlier, we're actually launching our own telehealth in November. So if you are in the US, you can actually sign up to be on the wait list. But yeah, we'll have all these drugs available. And I really kind of want to finish this by, again, asking you to reflect and think, okay, what is something, a condition I'm really passionate about, and know that you can actually make a difference, because we're entering a new era in healthcare where we really all can make a difference. So thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.